No, it's a high of 30 today, man. I'm telling you, I'm in my house. I'm dying. I haven't connected the AC unit yet because I got the portable one. You got to put it through the window. It's a whole thing.
That's
So
the
I got
thing.
like
In Alberta,
10
you guys are
fans
living
running.
in the third world. Barely any AC over there. You guys got to step your game up.
Yeah, and Alex is on the other side of things. It looks like he's bundled right up for winter. So I don't know what's going on.
It's very bipolar here in Vancouver. It's beautiful sun one day. It's like the Bahamas one day, and then, well, I guess I don't know. Have you guys ever been to the Bahamas?
Yes.
I haven't been to the Bahamas, but I've been to Vancouver, and that's my one problem with Vancouver. It's always raining. So
Most of the time.
Always raining, and there's always homeless. So there's that.
Yeah, it depends where you are. All right, let's hop into things. So yeah, just starting off, guys. I mean, it seems like we see these land acknowledgements every day, but yeah, there was a specific land acknowledgement that caught your eye in your neck of the woods there, Alex. Did you want to talk to us about that?
Oh yeah, this is an old one. It's just the funniest land acknowledgement I've ever seen because it looks like it's like straight out of a scene from Reno 911. So this guy just has this ridiculous mustache. The story itself is already ridiculous. So what had happened was a fella who runs a food van versus a food truck. He sells ice cream out of his van. He decided to load it up full of explosives and then like use it to block the only major bridge in Kelowna. It's a vital choke point between West Kelowna and regular Kelowna. And he threatened to blow up the bridge. It basically shut the entire region down for an entire day. And the RCMP thought it was more important to do a land acknowledgement than to address the fact that there's a crazy person threatening to blow up the bridge.
Morning. My name is Corporal Michael Gauthier, Media Relations Officer with the Kelowna Central Okanagan RCMP Detachment. Firstly, we acknowledge and respect that this land is the traditional and unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan people who have resided here since time immemorial and will continue to be here for many generations to come.
What made that land acknowledgement stand out to you there, Alex? I mean, they all seem the same to me. Like, it's just like, oh, we're doing this again.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like any other land acknowledgement. What is the point of this exactly? Like, I understand that virtue is good, but virtue signaling, what is the point of this?
Yeah, you had this guy just fiddling around, reaching for a document in his back pocket, like, oh my God, like, let's get this over with. You've got serious issues to deal with. And I mean, this was a serious story. This guy tried to blow up a bridge. That's like on some, super villain type deal. So, the fact that you're starting off this very serious press conference with the land acknowledgement kind of makes the whole ordeal look a little goofy.
Yeah, and we also saw the king deliver the throne speech, and I always thought to myself that land acknowledgements don't really stretch outside of Canada because surely no other countries are doing this. I mean, why would they? But then we saw the king deliver the throne speech, and he delivered a land acknowledgement as well, which left me scratching my head because I was like, oh, I guess in a way it does stretch outside of Canada. Do we have that clip?
I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and the Shinabeg people. This land acknowledgement is a recognition of shared history as a nation, while continuing to deepen my own understanding. It is my great hope that in each of your communities and collectively as a country, a path is found toward truth and reconciliation in both word and deed.
Yeah, it looked like he was reading his notes pretty closely there, so I don't think he had the land acknowledgement memorized per se. But yeah, what did you guys think of the king delivering the land acknowledgement there?
Yeah, just before I just want to preface this whole thing by saying he's the king of Canada, so it kind of makes sense that in the woke Canada that we exist in today, that our king is sort of reflecting back what this country has become over, especially these past 10 years of liberal rule, where the land acknowledgements have sort of become normalized in Canadian society, even if it is for an event that is completely unrelated to Indigenous issues. But the throne speech really highlighted exactly what the Carney government has been campaigning on, and really, highlighted some of the worst fears that some conservatives had. For example, the land acknowledgement. It really shows that the Carney government is not moving away from the wokeism that Justin Trudeau had brought in during his time as prime minister, and that really, I think, is a major concern for a lot of conservatives who seen the wokeification of Canada as one of the big demerits of the past 10 years of governance, along with the economic issues, along with the immigration issues, and the list goes on. Let's say, but definitely the pervasiveness of wokeism is one of the things that a lot of Canadians were hoping Mark Carney might turn around on. We saw before election day. He said that he would respect, the heritage of our English, French, and Indigenous people, sort of hearkening back to a sort of nationalistic sense of self and of our nation. Definitely not the post-national vision that Trudeau had articulated, but the land acknowledgement concedes a point to the left that the Canada is in some sense illegitimate, that this land was seized illegitimately. And, I think we can acknowledge that, the seizure of the land definitely didn't work out for the original inhabitants in the way that they probably had hoped. That's largely because of disease. Killed off about 90% of the Indigenous population. It wasn't, you didn't see the sort of violent conquest as you did in the United States in Canada. And I think that, history has shown that the British Crown has tried to treat the Indigenous peoples at least fairly in the sort of historical context, even if that didn't manifest itself in the most, let's say, beneficial policies for those peoples. But again, this land acknowledgement really is something to behold. I mean, you can definitely tell that the Carney government, they wrote this part of the throne speech. I mean, they probably write the entire thing. I at least like to think that Mr. King Charles had not written or had written himself the last section of the throne speech, which was actually pretty good, talking about Canada and our sort of nationhood. But it was definitely disappointing to see and surprising to see the king make this land acknowledgement and basically say that we're on this unceded territory. And he said, "quote while continuing to deepen my own understanding, this with a great hope, a path is found toward truth and reconciliation in both word and deed." Definitely repeating a lot of the center left language on this issue for over a decade now.
Have you guys ever noticed that these land acknowledgements always say it's the unceded territory of more than one tribe?
Yeah,
I have, yes.
Like, isn't that strange?
I guess.
Because
Yeah,
like
I mean,
the logical conclusion there would be, okay, well, let's let them fight it out then.
yeah. I mean, I'm not familiar
Like,
with.
it's not like there's something
But-
kind of in a sense kind of nice about that in terms of like fighting. It actually swims upstream from white guilt because it's
Yeah, I mean,
amongst themselves.
I mean, I'm not really sure like what the sort of territorial, geographic sort of makeup of the different nations were, but at the end of the day, you do bring up a good point in that these are nations who were fighting over the land long before Europeans came to Canada and just to North America in general. So this was not like land that had not been stained with bloodshed through warfare. It definitely had, and if you look at some of the ceremonies that some of the indigenous tribes had, they're quite violent and not merciful to their opponents. Let's just say that. But
Yeah, they didn't even have written maps. So of
right,
course it's
so
unfeasible.
I think this whole song and dance of doing the land acknowledgements is stupid. But the throne speech did have like some more substance just beyond the land acknowledgement. Carney or through the king, Carney talked about some of his priorities, so many of which he highlighted throughout the campaign trail. But what was noticeable, I think, in the speech was the lack of a condemnation of the United States and the lack of condemnation of U.S. President Donald Trump, definitely in stark contrast from the rhetoric we heard from Carney on the campaign trail. Now, there was a story that came out a few days before the throne speech that claimed that British ministers were trying to convince the Carney government to tone down the language, tone down the rhetoric when it comes to the United States. So it's a bit concerning that another country is trying to tell the Carney government how to write the throne speech and what the sovereign can and cannot say on behalf of his own country. But definitely took a much more moderate tone on Donald Trump, not really calling him out by name, not really talking about the tariffs, and really when trying to hint about those U.S.-Canada issues, really addressing it in a more indirect way. So, like, what would you guys make of this sort of shift in tone that the Carney government has taken over the past few weeks on the Trump issue, and how that was reflected in the throne speech?
Yeah, well, obviously we've seen a strong shift in stance of Carney's government from essentially the election until directly after the election. The tone changed almost immediately because, of course, Carney arguably prefaced or based his whole electoral campaign on dealing with the United States. But then, of course, we saw that maybe that wasn't the reality after the election. And then we even later found out that, in fact, Carney had canceled most of the tariffs during the election process secretly. He didn't tell anyone because he's like, oh, we'll stand up to Trump. But in the end, that wasn't the case at all. And then we've seen Carney meeting with Trump, and it's definitely not as combative as he might have suggested during the election campaign, which, hey, I mean, call it what you will, misleading, lying, whatever. At the end of the day, the United States are our most important ally, and we would much rather be an ally to them than an enemy, because we need them for so many things, but most importantly, defense. Yeah, I mean, what have you thought, Alex, of the shift there?
Do you really believe that we need the United States for defense?
Yes, of course. Imagine if China or Russia came to Canada. We have no military. Our defense is a joke. We need the United States.
That's the issue, is that you have to imagine it.
Yeah, but
there's no time in history in which the United States has ever defended Canada. There is a time in history in which Canada has defended the United States under NATO Article 5 when we went to Afghanistan, and we were probably the toughest people there defending the United States. The United States, I also, just if I may, the United States has not won a war in almost 2 generations. They haven't won. The last time they won a war was World War II, and barely, because they were barely involved. They've lost every war since then. When has the United States ever even offered to defend Canada? And
well, I think a lack of stomach in carrying out wars is not necessarily doesn't remove the fact that they have the most powerful military in the entire world. And you know, at the end of the day, if we piss off our continental ally, that's not doing us. It's better if they're on our side. In the case of, say, a Russian invasion from the north, we know that Russia, they want to really codify their position in the Arctic. And potentially even encroach on Canadian territory in their efforts to solidify their control over the Arctic. And certainly Canada needs to build up our own military, which has been massively gutted under the Trudeau government and even before. But if we don't have the United States being an ally, providing intelligence at the very least, providing some material support, providing naval support, support from the air, that would make our ability to counter those Russian threats in the north. It would make it a lot tougher, especially when the Russians, they feel a bit more emboldened with their looking like a successful conquest of eastern Ukraine. So it's definitely important that in a time when Russia is looking a bit more emboldened, that we build up our military, but we also don't piss off our greatest military asset, who's also an Arctic country because of Alaska.
If I can maybe flesh out my point very quickly, I'll just land my plane here, is the idea that I hear from a lot of again, I'm going to quote this, I'm going to use the term again, I don't care how much hate mail we get, Trump savior syndrome. So these people who have Trump savior syndrome, who think that Donald Trump is somehow going to magically save Canada, they make 2 points. The first point is that we need the United States because they protect us. And then the second point they make is we need the United States because we've been invaded by China. How can both of those things be true at once?
Well, I'll just touch on that.
If the United States is protecting us, how did we get invaded by China?
Firstly, you asked when the last time the United States said they'd defend us or something along those lines. It was actually when Carney and Trump recently met in the White House. That was one of my key takeaways from the meeting, because it was mostly fluff. But Trump did state clearly we are your ally. We will defend you. But just to touch on your point quickly regarding China and Russia invading Canada, I do have to say that I think their invasion, if it were to occur, would be much more tactful and secretive than actually invading us with an army. It would be like through, I don't know, technological espionage, spy warfare, you name it. But let's just call it more secretive than a million Chinese troops coming in like through planes or something. I don't think that would work out for them, because I mean there are better ways to do things, right? But moving on from that, we could talk more about the throne speech, especially we saw how conservative leaders across the country reacted to it, notably Pierre Poilievre and Danielle Smith. For example, Poilievre was talking about how what I took away from what he said was that talk is cheap. Look, he said the speech was full of slogans and nice words, but lacked the action behind the words. So they're talking about making Canada an energy superpower, but at the same time won't repeal Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines Act. So it's kind of a contradiction there. And I mean, there's an endless list that Pierre went through. But yeah, what did you guys think about the conservative leaders' reaction to the throne speech, and was it enough? Was it the right reaction?
Yeah, I mean, he's right. Like until Parliament, is in session for long enough to be able to pass legislation, and if for the Carney government to be installed long enough to make significant decisions in the executive, yeah, I think it is all talk. Talk is cheap, but what has Carney really committed to when it comes to, say, the energy file, right? He goes to a Quebec audience, says, on va pas bâtir les audioducs. We won't build pipelines. And then, he goes to Alberta, talks to Danielle Smith and says, oh, yeah, let's drill, baby, drill. So, like, unclear when it comes to the carbon tax. Sure, he was able to bring the consumer carbon tax down to zero with a government directive, but he still has not just said that he would bring down the industrial carbon tax. He actually has promised to escalate that. So that's something that's going to be challenging affordability. And on housing, we still don't really have concrete action beyond, say, the Housing Accelerator Fund that Justin Trudeau brought in and is not reaping results. He says he's going to build this government department, Build Canada Homes. But, in my experience, crown corporations aren't necessarily the biggest driver of economic growth and development. It's the private industries, it's the builders who are actually the ones who are going to get houses built, not government departments, not government bureaucrats. They're really good at spending money. They're not really good at creating value. And like, if you just go down the list of the things that he talked about in the throne speech, these are all things that he has not really made a lot of strides on. Certainly that's going to get some legislative approval on certain matters, but on a lot of these issues, he hasn't proven himself to be credible. And especially on the energy file, when Albertans see that Stephen Guilbeault is still in cabinet, when they see that Mélanie Joly is still in cabinet, when they see that Anita Anand is still in cabinet, people get the idea that this is still the status quo. So they really have a lot to prove in order to show that they're a change. And I think voters are going to start to sour on them within like 6 months if they don't start to show that change.
Yeah, interesting. You said 6 months there, Noah, because of course, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith previously gave Carney 6 months to do an official reset with Alberta, she said. But then after the throne speech, she tightened that timeline. She said she needs to see meaningful action within weeks, not months. And what's most interesting to me is the most recent Leger poll I've seen was on Alberta separation, showed that 41% of respondents would vote yes in a referendum, compared to only 44% voting no. Of course, the remaining percentage was I don't know or not applicable or whatever. But I mean, that's how close we're talking about. And of course, the Alberta Prosperity Project has submitted their petition question. So a referendum vote on Alberta separation could be close. And if Carney really doesn't show up for Albertans in any way, I think he's just going to push more and more Albertans away. So this really could have long-lasting, meaningful I don't know the word, consequences
Yeah,
for the whole country, right?
yeah, if there's no tangible progress for issues that Westerners have, there's going to be a real movement for separation. Quebec, they're always unhappy. Like, they're always complaining about something. So that's a given, right? He's going to have to, finagle that. He's going to have to deal with the Bloc Québécois in Parliament and, with his Quebec MPs. Okay, sure. Like, that's a given. But he doesn't really have representation in Calgary. Correct me if I'm wrong, Isaac, but the Liberals only won one seat in Alberta. So it's not like Albertans really even gave the Liberals, any sort of real support. So Carney's really going to have to understand what Albertans want when he doesn't have any Albertans in his caucus except for one person. And then he's going to have to try and come up with solutions that also satisfy his Liberal base. Like, again, the reason why in Quebec he says pas des audioducs is because that sort of politics is really popular in Quebec. But how is he going to satisfy the needs and desires of Westerners and Albertans when he has to also satisfy Quebecers? How is he going to move on the energy file when it comes to getting projects reviewed quicker? He said he wants one review to only be completed in 2 years instead of 5. Okay, I mean, how are you going to do that with Bill C-69? And what is Stephen Guilbeault going to say if you try to repeal or amend Bill C-69? Are you going to get certain defections? Like this, he's really balancing this is a high wire act, and he's going to have to show some political competence in this role. Let's see, he's a bureaucrat by trade, not a politician. But if he doesn't move on these issues, he's gonna have a real big national unity problem out west.
I think the parallels that we're drawing between Quebec separatism and Alberta separatism are really interesting and really insightful. Because when I think back to the convoy protest in Ottawa, I think the most terrifying thing about that for the Liberal Party, and by extension the Laurentian elite, was when you had Quebecois, the fleur-de-lis and the Alberta flag flying side by side. They basically live on us disliking each other. And when we come together, that's the worst thing possible for them, because their political lives depend on these wedge issues.
Yeah, and just sorry to correct you quick there, Noah. I think the Liberals actually have 2 seats in Alberta, and if I'm correct, 1 seat.
Small
in
miracle for
Saskatchewan.
them, really.
Yeah, 1 seat in Saskatchewan. So Saskatchewan is even more conservative when we're talking about the West as a whole. But just quickly, I guess, while we're on the subject, what are the Liberals? 3 seats from a majority, 4 seats? Yeah, how do you guys think that's going to work in the House? Are they just going to? People have talked about the NDP potentially crossing over. I mean, do you think they'll have a working majority, or are they going to actually have to work hard to accomplish that, or is it just automatic?
The NDP are a total disaster. You could fit all of them into a minivan and none of them can get along. Like, no, seriously, they absolutely detest each other. Don Davies and Jenny Kwan are like right next to each other here in Vancouver, and they couldn't be more diametrically opposed on virtually every issue. So I find out if the NDP aligns with the Liberals, at that point they will just render themselves even more meaningless, and it'll be their death knell.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, Alex. I think the fact that the NDP, their internal cohesion is weak, I think that will lead to them showing more deference to the Liberals because, well, they have internal party matters to deal with. They can't afford going to an election. Imagine they go to an election with a interim leader and the MPs don't like each other. I mean, like they already suffered like a monumental disaster a few months ago. It's like the disaster is going to get worse if that's the case. If they can't even get together and stay on a certain message, you're gonna have Leah Gazan campaigning on basically a communist party platform, and then you're gonna have Don Davies trying to bring it back to the Jack Layton days, and you're gonna see like this huge contrast between the different candidates running. It would be a crappy situation for the NDP if Parliament dissolved and an election was foisted upon them. So I think they're going to be deferential to the Liberals, at least until they get a new leader. But even after they get a new leader, they're not going to have a lot of money to work with. Their fundraising is in the gutter. They're not receiving funds because they have no official party status. I think they're going to be really loath to go to an election. And the Bloc Québécois, is in a similar position. They went from 33 seats to 23 seats. They were expecting to gain seats and they lost some, and it's a little demoralizing. So I don't think Yves François Blanchet is exactly itching to go to an election. So I think it's going to be at least a couple years until we get another election. I'd say 2027 at the earliest.
Yeah, and the Liberals not filing a budget, now that you mention it, I guess that is technically a vote of confidence that they avoid, because obviously if a budget is not passed, that puts the country
you just
into an
don't
election.
table any budgets. You're not going to have to bring your government to confidence. So it's a great tactic. It's illegal, but good job.
Moving on from that, Alex, since you're the oldest one here, maybe you're the most familiar with Bono. What did we think of what Bono was saying? I mean, we see so often these celebrities talking about Canada. They might not have stepped foot in Canada for decades, much like Mark Carney before he became Prime Minister.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why Bono is chiming in on Canadian politics at all. Like, he's the most irrelevant thing in the world after Canadian politics itself. Like, when was the last time anybody got excited about a Bono song?
Yeah. In preparation for this podcast, I have to figure out who's Bono, who exactly is U2, what are their songs? Isaac's telling me they have some classics. Okay, I mean,
yeah, you should check out the Joshua Tree. That's like an old album. It came out before I was alive. I'm not that old, but it's pretty good.
Okay, is that gonna jive with your average Kanye West enjoyer, or is it like
there's fucking off there about Kanye is way better. Like, Yeezus is way better than the Joshua Tree, in my opinion. But you should check it out. It's like part of the musical canon.
Alex, you're gonna get hate mail for that now, saying Kanye West is better than U2.
Yeah, we're tipping all the sacred cows. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, no, I mean, YouTube. But yeah, Bono's an idiot.
Yeah, no, it's funny. I often think people in Canada think everyone pays attention to our politics and everyone cares so much. I don't think that's the case at all. But then we do see celebrities that are kind of irrelevant, I guess, trying to take their spot back in the spotlight by talking about Canada for some unknown reason. So, I mean, I don't know why anyone would do that, but...
Yeah, the people like Bono, I hate when they do this because they try and reinforce this idea that Canada is this inherently progressive country. I mean, go back in the history from 1867 to 1891, some of our most formative years. The Conservatives governed the country for all but 4 years. This is a country founded by a conservative or by conservatives, and it is a country that, sure, for the past 75 years hasn't been great for the Conservatives electorally, but at the end of the day, Canadians do have some deep-rooted Canadian instincts, even if it is not reflected in our governance from our federal politicians in Ottawa. But, Bono doing this, sort of just reinforces this progressive view of Canada that is actually just a bit of a myth. I mean, if you look at the polling just in December 2024, the Liberals were doing great. We were going to have that conservative populist scary man that Bono was so fretting about. But I think he's going to be disappointed in the next election results. I'd be very surprised if the Liberals win 5 elections in a row. But Bono's comments here, he's I just quote him: "I'm so happy to be speaking to you Canadians at the time in your political life, coming together, showing the world how to do it. I was always a fan of your mosaic, your culture, your reason, and never more so than now." I mean, repeating the whole mosaic line. And saying how our culture, our reason, we're just smarter than Americans. It's this very arrogant sort of self-conscious view that Canadians have of Americans. And sure, maybe President Trump does some stupid stuff with the tariffs, but at the end of the day, Americans are generally good people. They're very much like us, and we should respect them, and we should love our fellow Americans as we do our fellow Canadians.
Yeah, bringing it back to Canada, I guess. We saw some big news, perhaps bigger than some would know, because obviously the legacy media wouldn't ever be touching on this, but CBC was celebrating the erasure of a popular conservative channel. In fact, I think the most popular conservative YouTube channel throughout the election, if I'm right on that. But yeah, the CBC was applauding that this channel got deleted for questionable purposes, or deleted, I don't know if deleted or suspended, but questionable purposes at best. Very unclear from YouTube's reasoning what rules were broken, if any. And not just talking on the CBC, but also on YouTube. I mean, this was shocking to me that they would get involved in something like this, and that they would essentially be politically censoring conservative media on the chat on the platform. I mean, yeah, what did you guys think of this channel getting taken down there?
My attitude towards the CBC is the same as my attitude towards Rachel Gilmore. Let's just stop talking about them.
That's a great attitude. You know, they're both irrelevant.
Yeah, they are. They're constantly desperate to make themselves relevant, right? Because they're losing the market share on account of their own incompetence. So let's just stop talking about them. You know, like obviously this is something that should be contested with UBC, or not UBC, sorry, YouTube. We should be dealing with this privately, but let's just leave the CBC alone. They're not relevant. They're not important. They are becoming increasingly irrelevant. The more we talk about them, the more power we give them. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. And, you know, YouTube said that the channel was terminated based on their policy on spam, scams, and deceptive practices. I mean, if, you know, criticizing the Liberal government is a scam or, you know, deceptive, I think that's, you know, that reflects really, really poorly on, you know, how we are valuing free speech in our civil society. I think that the CBC, the only audience for a piece like this, you know, taking down this right-wing YouTube channel, like that's the only audience for that piece is liberals, it's progressives, it's left-wingers. You know, this is something that Press Progress would do. You know, like Press Progress, they would like send out like request for comment to a conservative channel, and then just like make up some fake story. Like that's basically what the CBC did, except it's a lot worse. They actually just got like a channel completely taken down. I thought YouTube, they have a 3 strikes policy. I don't know, maybe if they're at like 2 and then they went over, but like just to completely ban the channel for, you know, making sure maybe some of it's AI generated, but content criticizing the government, definitely not a good look.
I am interested just to get the opinion of the room here, and I'm not playing devil's advocate on behalf of the CBC, but I think one of the issues was the AI, right? Because they did that AI video of Ronald Reagan. And I do have concerns about that technology, right? Because as it becomes better and better, we do run the risk of entering into a misinformation crisis, right? I'm just curious, like, what you guys think about that.
Yeah, no,
more adept with this technology.
If I recall from the article, the channel owner said they had found the AI elsewhere on the platform on YouTube, and that's how they got it. And I don't know if they thought it was real or whatever, but just based on fair use alone, if it's somewhere else and you use it in a different way, you can easily legally use that. I don't know how that would violate their policy, especially with the fair use deal. But another thing, just touching on the CBC, I was looking at their financial report from last year. $1.4 billion in government funding, $1.9 billion in expenses, and about $500 million in revenue to just break even. So, I mean, imagine you're getting $1.9 billion in government funding and you can barely break even. I mean, 1.4 billion. This is shocking. I don't know how any Canadian taxpayer could be happy with the CBC in its current form, but especially essentially acting as a tool of the government, and how could they operate any differently when they're getting that much money? It's an inevitable consequence, right?
Well, yeah, getting all that money for content like this, it's kind of pathetic. You know, I think like, you know, there has to be some regulation when it comes to, you know, trying to make AI content that like looks like someone and sounds like someone and trying to like push a false narrative. But you know, this person, as you mentioned, found the video secondhand and then just like reposted it. And you know, I don't know if this was supposed to be like a video that looks like a real Reagan speech or something like that, and it's not. But you know, a lot of AI videos are just like made for fun or made to, you know, like prove a point or, you know, a message. So I wouldn't like, you know, be too strict on that. I think there should still be allowed to be AI content on YouTube, even if people like me don't really like it. If people like it, then and advertisers are willing to put their ads in front of those videos, then I'll go for it. I think that's should be fair. And I think the way that the CBC conducted this hit on this channel, it was really unfair.
Yeah, and I guess now the more that I think about it, the more I realize we're putting the onus on the user of the platform rather than the platform itself, right? YouTube already employs a lot of AI technology. For instance, if you put like a copyrighted song on YouTube, it'll flag it right away because its AI technology is so good. So they should really be using their AI technology to flag AI as AI rather than, beating up the user for not being smart enough to do that themselves. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
great compromise. Just put a little message at the bottom of the video.
Yeah.
And I've talked to a few lawyers just historically when writing the odd articles about AI and the laws surrounding it, and it's not clear. So I do agree with you, Noah, that maybe some clarification around what's acceptable on YouTube with AI and just in general would be nice. But I mean, attacking and taking down independent journalists for something like this, and as you said, one-sided example, isn't there a 3 strikes rule? Or maybe, hey, you can't do this, we're taking that video down, not your whole channel. I mean, it does seem like an overreach to me, and I would consider it personally as political censorship. I don't know how else you could look at it. Like, this is the top conservative channel during the election, and you take it down for questionable reasons at best. I mean, yeah, just definitely not a good look for the CBC, and not a good look for YouTube either. But I mean, when you're a media conglomerate the size of YouTube, I guess you can really do whatever you want with no consequences, because there are no better. Well, you're essentially a monopoly, right? Like,
Yeah. Rumble
anyways.
tries, but
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, there are other things, but YouTube, it really stands on its own. Let's be real.
Yes.
That's how the CBC wishes it was with them compared to other news channels. And while it might be that way in funding, it definitely isn't in reach or viewership.
State of our country would be shocking if that was the case.
Well, I think CBC has a reason to feel insecure, right? I mean, again, I hate to take everything back to COVID and the convoy, but the mainstream media, not just the CBC, we're also talking about Chorus News, CTV, Global. They lost so much credibility, right? That people just stopped watching. And now they're basically dependent on government subsidies. And they're realizing that isn't even sufficient, as you had pointed out, Isaac. And so now what they're looking to do is just remove the competition as opposed to improving their own coverage.
If I'm not mistaken, Chorus has become a penny stock, and I remember there was some talk about Elon maybe buying it. It's like, hey, Elon, what a deal! You could buy Chorus for essentially pennies. Like, hop on it, but no one wants to own. I mean, owning a media company is no easy task.
Maybe you can buy it, Isaac.
Honestly, guys, it's worth so little money. Like, we probably could. Like, if we
could all pitch in to buy Chorus.
yeah. Like, it's worth the cost of like 2 duplexes in Vancouver. I can't believe somebody else hasn't done this already. We really should just do like a crowdfunding thing or something.
Yeah, all the Trudeau staff, just put their money together, buy a Chorus. I think that'd be exceptional.
But then you own this dog, right? Like, it's a total dog. Right? So
I definitely can't afford 1 duplex in Vancouver, let alone 2, Alex. But those are what, 2 million a pop, probably for 3 million. I mean,
yeah, for a full duplex. Oh, dude, it's like, yeah, it's more than Chorus Entertainment.
All right. Just remember, everything you heard today was off the record. Yeah. Do you actually know, like,
what the market cap is?
What do you get? Just the name? Like, do they have any assets? Like,
no, you'd have to take on all of the debt, right? And that's what I mean by it's a dog, because it's basically like buying a ship with holes in it mid-sea, right? Like that's why nobody's gonna buy it.
That's a nice analogy.
Stock is trading at 9.5 cents. The market cap is 18.9 million, and their debt is probably more than 18.9 million. So.
I'm guessing yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So it's one of those things where it's like worth more dead than it is alive, right? Like,
whatever we could do to like put it out of its mercy, grow True North, take their market share. I think that would be a merciful way to put them out of their misery.
Well, and like a lot of these people too that are working there, like you can't just fire them, right? You have to pay out severances and so on and so forth. So it'd be a really, really like kind of a dumb thing. It's a bad investment. Don't.
I don't know. It seems like you know what to do with it, Alex. Maybe you should be CEO.
Burn it all
of,
down.
yeah. Just rename it Zoltan Entertainment.
Zolt's, yeah, another amazing Zoltan production.
Yeah.
Buy up course, get all their buildings, turn it into affordable housing. It's exactly like the Liberals or what Pierre's plan was with the CBC.